Welcome, fans, to another live edition of the Cheap Heat Productions Pro Wrestling Podcast. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling. Morris is off tonight, but we are pleased to welcome an individual who you will know as a current National Wrestling Alliance talent. He's also had quite an illustrious career on the independents, which we'll talk about, but he also participated in WWE Next Gen, that series that John Cena was the executive producer of, and we're going to get into all the particulars around that. But welcome, Mr. Bryan Idol. Bryan, how are you tonight, sir?
Hey, man, I'm good. Thanks for having me. Sorry, I'm a little disheveled. My hair's crazy. It's about 100 degrees out, and I was doing some power washing on the house, and it's a big house. And the power washing, the wand that I do it with weighs probably 50 pounds. So it took a lot out of me to do 2 or 3 hours of power washing like that. So I'm a little disheveled. But other than that, I'm great.
No worries. It's a heck of a day for it, and sounds like a good workout too.
Yeah, for real. I'll just start lifting weights.
The fans are usually interested in an individual's background, so it seems like a logical place to start. About what made you decide to pursue such a tough business, that wrestling business? Were you a fan growing up, or how did that happen?
Yeah, man, I said this to somebody the other day, and it's really the absolute truth. I must have been, I don't know, no more than 6 years old, and I pretty much had it in my head that I would be a pro wrestler and rock star. And I don't think I've ever compromised on it one day in my life. So as bizarre as that really is to say that, like, I mean, I remember writing papers in second grade and writing that, and like, oh, that's cute, right? Like, you're gonna grow up and you're gonna be a manager at a Best Buy. No, like I wrote I was gonna be a wrestler or a rock star, and I always followed that path. I never veered from it once. And it is a tough road. It is whatever. But I mean, I think like anything else in life, somebody once told me, another famous actor once told me that Burt Reynolds once told him that success is all relative. So basically, you get what you put in. And I remember him telling me that probably in the early days of my wrestling career. And he was right, and I appreciated it. And it was words like that always kept me going. So always just something I wanted to do, man. Something I wanted to do, and I just did it, and that's how I live my life. I just do things I want to do, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. By chance, were you influenced by the great WCW talent of yesteryear who combined both wrestling and rock stardom, that being one Van Hammer?
No, I'm way older than that. Van Hammer was, like he was way later. I mean, I know who it is. I've drawn some comparisons to him. It's pretty funny. And I've actually met him before, and my brother, who's a wrestler, actually knows him a little better and lives in the same area, and he gets confused for Van Hammer a lot, which is funny. But no, my biggest influence, I mean, straight up, Hulk Hogan, and then like Jake the Snake and the Macho Man, and then from there you can pick and choose. But I mean, those were the guys early on that, and that was like the beginning of their run, when I was young, and that was what I was into. And it was weird because as far as pro wrestling, I mean, I got to credit my brother. I never went, until whatever age it was like one day I had no concept of it, and then the next day I watched it, and it was like my favorite thing ever. So that was just it. So I just went for it.
Good for you, pursuing your dream. This next question may seem generic at first, but is definitely going to tie in when we talk about Next Gen. I wanted to ask you as to your training process and what that looked like, and then we'll talk about your latter work with Next Gen.
A couple sneezes later, I'll get back to you now. All right. Anyway,
hay fever.
Well, I mean, I'm just blowing pollen around here with this pressure washer. So my training started at a place called the LIWF Doghouse, which is in Queens, New York, which is most notoriously known for producing guys like Homicide and Low Key. And they didn't train me. I mean, they trained with me, but they definitely gave me pointers. But I was brought in there with an old school guy who was a local indie. And it's funny because I say old school, and the guy was like my age now, but I mean, he seemed a lot older.
Mhm.
He definitely looked a lot older. But his name was Crazy Don Rock, and he was well known in the New York area. But a guy never really did anything huge, but a good worker, very good understanding of ring psychology. And I saw us, a bunch of us goofing around in our backyard, and not to brag or whatever, but most people's backyard feds don't consist of Mikey from the Spirit Squad, Tony Nese, me. I had a pretty solid lineup there. So there's a couple other
Mhm.
guys too that did some stuff on the indies and are still doing stuff. So uh, yeah, they took us there, and a few of us there at the time anyway, and it was really not traditional. Like, I mean, it was like they were basically just watching New Japan or other, it was a FMW, and like doing crazy Japanese spots, man. And like I remember my first day of training taking superplexes off the top rope, power bombs. Why not,
Your
right?
first day.
So first day one, I'm like, yeah, I can do it, taking superplexes. I think I gave one too, but I mean, tilt the world tombstone pile, moves that I don't do now. Moves that are too hard for me to do now, I was doing on day
Wow.
one. So man, it was wild. And then, the journey continued. After like a year or two, and I wouldn't say my dedication was it was, but you gotta understand, I was living on my own at this point. I'm like 16 years old. So I had my own struggle just getting there half the time. And then, no less, I'm getting killed in there because I'm taking superplexes on day one. So physically, mentally, I wasn't where I needed to be fitness wise. And, the journey continued. And I, like I said, I fault myself and say, oh, well, I wasn't as dedicated as I needed to be, but I probably was, but whatever. I went and trained with Mikey Whipwreck for a while, and great trainer at the time. He was very mean to me. I don't know why. He just didn't like me.
Mikey,
And,
for real?
yeah, I mean, we've patched it up now, but if I'm telling the truth, man, I mean, there's something I don't talk about that much. He was a really big dick to me, and he apologized to me years later, and he said he's really proud of me and all the things I do, and he said, like, I guess I impressed him because he probably just thought I was terrible or I was an idiot or whatever. But then I really finished up. If you were like, somebody that really trained me and taught me the game for real, or at least what it takes and how to do it, would be Sabu. And I'm one of the only guys that could say that. And still very close with him to this day. And I actually saw him a few weeks ago. I'll probably see him again in another couple of weeks. And glad he's still with us. And he probably shouldn't be. And yeah, man. So it just continued on from there. And then just after a while, you just keep wrestling. And life turns into one of those things where somebody says, oh, you're a wrestler, to like, now the whole world knows I'm a wrestler. I can't go anywhere. Honestly, anywhere I go, usually somebody recognizes me. It's pretty inconvenient at this point.
Mm-hmm. Given the fact that Sabu's, uncle was the original Sheik who had a very interesting take on the business, or I should say pragmatic in terms of it being about money. And Sabu has, throughout the years been somewhat critical of those that aren't in it for money. What was the best piece of advice that he gave you, or wisdom, if you will?
I mean, he definitely taught me about all that. He taught me things like, once you work for somebody for one rate of pay, you almost never get more than that from them, which is a huge lesson. And it makes sense, because like, it's very rare that your value goes up the more somebody uses you. I mean, it's not impossible. I like this comment that just popped up. Hey, man.
Do you know Kingpin?
No, I just like his comment. It's funny.
Yeah,
I'll pass that message along for you, bro. I'll be seeing Homicide this weekend in Puerto Rico. So
he's an ECW original. He was one half of the Baldies, and he's going to be.
Oh, is that? That Spanish Angel there? I know him. I know who he is. Okay, all right.
Yeah, he
knows. I'll tell you
humorous.
right now, if he's watching that, I think he knows Crazy Don Rock. I think he knew him from back in the day. That's a guy Crazy Don Rock used to talk about all the time. It might have even been on that. Was it him that was on that People's Court episode, or was that another Angel dude? It might have been on a People's Court episode. I don't know. Type back in if that's you. Anyway,
Sorry to interrupt your train of thought.
No, that was funny. Anyway, I was saying though, so it's true though. Like, how many times do you wrestle for a promoter and your value goes up, especially on an indie level. It's just like when you're in a main company, you can work your way up the ladder if it's constant. But like when you're coming back 1 month, then 3 months later, then 2 months after that, your value usually doesn't go up. So he taught me about that kind of stuff, and also taught me not to cry out loud about injuries. Like you see so many of these guys, it's cool, man. It's everybody's different, but like you never see me posting how injured I am, or like, and the only times I ever have is like I'll show you all the injuries all over me and be like, I ain't slowing down. I just keep going. I'm just having fun with it. But like I would never. There's been times I've been pretty injured, and I'm not posting looking for sympathy or any of that, because he explained to me like, when you do that, then people think you're weak, and if people think you're weak, they don't want to invest money in you. So he has very good. The irony of all this is what I'm going to say, if I'm being honest, is like Sabu, great mindset for how to make money in wrestling, poor execution, because we all know Sabu should be a billionaire, but just never pulled it off like that. Definitely made some money, but not what he should have, and definitely didn't save it or do anything good with it. So it's everybody does their thing. So I mean, I don't think I'm giving away any information there, but but I've heard it said before, that he should have a gazillion dollars and doesn't. But he did understand how to make money. Sometimes maybe it came back to bite him a little bit, because he stood his ground on things where maybe other guys would have buckled and it would have worked out in the end because he's super talented. But again, not my place to say or really pretend like I know, because I wasn't there and whatever. So, but yeah, he taught me that kind of stuff, and I think that came from the Sheik. Honestly, I think everything Sabu learned. I think the coolest thing about learning from him is he was very like it never felt like he struggled to tell me information. He always just had it, like it was just there, and I think it was ingrained in him from his uncle.
Mm-hmm.
So,
speaking of ECW legends and figures that were so important to the original company's success, I saw that you had quite a few matches against the late great Balls Mahoney.
oh yeah,
and was wondering if you could talk about working with Balls, because a lot of fans feel that he doesn't get the degree of credit that he deserves for being not only a brilliant character but very adept worker.
So here's the funny part about what you just said. The only people that I've ever heard talk bad about him as a worker are people that I don't think are good wrestlers. So without giving too much away, and I could tell you, I've wrestled. If you've seen the list of names, I'm not going to sit here and waste everybody's time, but we're talking from the Hardy Boys to Gold Dust to blah 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 blah. Wrestled everybody, man. I've wrestled almost everybody that you could possibly wrestle, and he is one of the best. And it's exactly what you just said. Could adapt to pretty much anything. Plus, at the point where I was wrestling with him, was very limited in some ways, and could still get it done and have a great match. Very good on a microphone, great charisma. You couldn't kill him. You know what I mean? It was like they don't make them like that anymore. Balls Mahoney was rarer than rare, and I think the reason why that perception is the opposite of him is because of the way he looked and the way he carried himself. He was a maniac, and but deep down, I would use the word honestly, if I'm being honest, very carny, but deep down a very lovable guy. And once he was, on your team and you guys were friends, like he's your friend till the end. I don't know if everybody knows, he was super best friends with Chris Candido, and named his kid after him, had memoriam tattoos of Chris Candido. That's the kind of friend he was. That's that's the level of loyalty he had to the people he loved. So I think he was a tremendous wrestler, tremendously underrated, and a lot more versatile than you give him credit for. But then again, what can you say? I mean, does he really need to be versatile? He looks a certain way. He's like a caveman. He's like a hardcore caveman. So that's what you use him as. That's the whole point. Like, do you really want to see Balls? I mean, maybe I think it would be cool if they made Balls Mahoney a romance novel character, but but if they dressed him like the Beast and Beauty and the Beast, like at the end. But yeah, just what can you do? I just think that's the rep he gets. But yeah, he was great, man, and genuinely enjoyed. There's still some old ones floating around somewhere on YouTube. Genuinely enjoyed wrestling Balls Mahoney every time. It was very rare that I ever complained about it. Also, fun fact: the only time I think I ever cut myself in the ring was a match with Balls Mahoney. And I was joking about it with somebody, and I said, "Yeah, I cut myself, and it felt pretty good." And I looked at him, and I was like, "Am I good?" And he was like, "No, you want me to do it more? I'll do it for you." And I was like, "Oh," because I just took one look at his head, and I knew where that's going. So, and actually, I did cut myself pretty good. So I was like, "He's just a maniac." But I mean, by the end of his career, I mean, if you saw Balls, I mean, his career never really ended; he just passed away. But towards the end there, if you saw this forehead, he had like a 3-dimensional swoop. It was so big you could probably put a shot glass on top of it, and he wore it like a badge of honor. A lot of charisma, Balls. A lot of charisma. He was a guy. I seen him do some things I don't think people would believe that he did, and he was pretty awesome, man.
Wanted to, I know you touched on it there briefly, but you have worked in the ring against so many folks. And just briefly, I wanted to get your brief impressions on some of the names that you've been in the ring with. If you could
I'll shoot on anybody. Let's go. Yeah, I'll shoot on anybody.
Perfect. Starting off with, again, another ECW legend who recently was profiled in Dark Side of the Ring, and that would be the Sandman.
Okay, the match I just mentioned, the Sandman was in that match. It was a 6-man, or a 6-man tag. So it was me and 2 guys versus Balls, Sandman, and Homicide, which was an on-ball team, basically hardcore themed. When I wrestled the Sandman in that match, it was actually hilarious. I remember he put me in a figure 4. Wasn't a lot of crowd there. It was a weird show. Put me in a figure 4, and I started screaming like a girl because I was doing this redneck character, and it was funny. And I remember he was laughing so hard that he was like, "Do it again, do it again." And I did it, and we rolled it over. We did it again. So very enjoyable. I would say, if you want me to say, is he any kind of good wrestler? No. He felt like you're wrestling somebody that watches wrestling and whatever. And maybe he's better than that, but he doesn't feel like it. And when I watch him on video, he doesn't look like it to me. But I mean, good guy. And I saw him, I think I was on a show with him a couple of years ago, more recently. Same thing, cool guy, funny. I think he almost kicked somebody's ass in the locker room, and I found it really amusing. Or maybe somebody tried to fight him. I can't remember. I think somebody tried to fight him. I don't know. I found it amusing. As the more I'm thinking about it, I think it was somebody I liked. I don't want to get into it, but I think it was somebody I liked. I think I kind of got in the middle of it. It was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Look, it's the fucking Sandman. Just let him be." And yeah, so I mean, like I said, that's my opinion on him.
Wow. Lanny Poffo, the late great Lanny Poffo.
Hey man, I think I was set to have his final match ever, and it got changed into a tag match. But the reason why I think it was going to be his final match ever is because that's what Lanny Poffo told me. And I wrestled him in Prince Edward Island, and we had a match. And he came up to me after, and he said, "Hey, I want you to know that we call that a cherry match. In WWE, that would be, or WWF, that would be our first time working together." And he's like, "We didn't know each other," and he's like, "That was as good of a match as I've ever had with anybody." And
Wow.
like, I'm not saying that was true, but I mean, at least he felt like that in the moment. He then went on to tell me in the same conversation that if my brother, the Macho Man, was still alive, the way you look, your size, your physique, and the way you wrestle and the way you get it, he was like, if he saw you wrestle me like that, he would want to wrestle you. He'd be calling Vince saying, "Hey, I want this guy. I want to run a program with him. He's the perfect guy for it." I don't know if that's true or not, if he says that to everybody or whatever, but I never heard anybody else tell me that story, and that's what he told me. And then we were supposed to have a match at the end of the tour, and he basically said to me, like, we talked about the match privately, and he wanted it to be perfect, and we had all these ideas, and it was all planned, and we were like, okay, this is going to be awesome. And then it got changed to a tag match, and I believe it was Bushwhacker Luke that changed it. And now these days I love Bushwhacker Luke. Back then I did not like Bushwhacker Luke because of that, and I really felt cheated from an amazing experience, because I was going to be the guy that retired Lanny Poffo. And let it be known, he was willing to go out on his back the right way, and he was like, "That's what I want." He's like, "I want to make her here in Nova Scotia," and so I felt a little cheated over lumping some guys into a crappy tag match, which then was a bad match. But you live and you learn. And the moral of the story, I guess, on that is I ended up being very cool with Bushwhacker Luke to this day. Years later, and we're pretty much neighbors, and yeah, he's always been very good to me since, but I was very mad at him at first.
Cool story. What about the man who is still active today, albeit in a different character, and that would be Goldust.
Level 10 out of 10 worker. Very good guy. Actually came in for my promotion a couple of times, and that's where I wrestled him. And he was very fair about what he charged. He was very professional about, what he was willing to do, and was so cool to hang out with. We're still cool to this day. I ran into him a couple years ago over at AEW. We were talking, and like his eyes lit up when he saw me, which makes me feel cool because half the time I don't expect people to recognize me. And he just like came right over to me, and we started talking for about a half hour straight, and it was just like all good. And I mean, he's as good as it gets, dude. And at the time I wrestled him, I told him, and like, it's so funny because what can you take credit for? What can't you take credit for? But like, I told him, I remember saying this to him. I was like, listen, I've wrestled guys that are, up, where you've been, like, and then coming down, like you're getting a little older. And I was like, you can feel some of the guys, they don't got it. Like there's nothing left when you're like banging into them. They're just like barely able to do it. And he was a guy who felt fresh and like a brick wall when I was wrestling him. So I was like, the one thing that would be cool is like, aside from the obvious good character you have, would be, try throwing in some wild moves. I was like, I bet if you did that, I was like, if you ever get back to TV, throw in a couple wild moves and you'll reinvent yourself all over again. Lo and behold, one day he does like a moonsault and like something else. And I like could basically talk to him about that. So I texted him. It's a good story. I got to tell you. So now just remember, I just said that I saw him a couple years ago. He totally recognized me. His eyes lit up, whatever. So he does the moonsault. I see the clip of it like a day later on social media or whatever. And I text him all excited. I think I was on a show somewhere. I texted him all excited, like, yo, man, I was like, I told you, bro, do something like that. And now everybody's eating out of the palm of your hand. And the reply comes back, who's this?
New phone. What do you do, right?
True story, man. I was like, all right. But then that's why years later when I saw him, I didn't expect him to want to talk to me. But he came right up to me and started talking to me. So I don't know. But I guess he genuinely changed his numbers.
Cool. Absolute future Hall of Famer, no doubt. And
I'm back.
Oh, yeah, I got you. Sorry.
All right. No, it's all right.
Last but not least, a staple of my company, Great North Wrestling, in the early years, who sold a lot of tickets and was very popular with the fans still. And I would be talking about the Honky Tonk Man.
Dude, absolutely love wrestling the Honky Tonk Man. My favorite part about him is he, at this point, or when that was, barely did anything in the ring, but would prefer to wrestle me. Like, I would be on shows for big time wrestling, and there'd be 8 guys to choose from. Then he'd be like, Perkins would be like, pick whoever you want, or Mr. TA would be like, if Mr. TA wasn't wrestling him in a 6-man tag, he'd be like, well, pick whoever you want out of these guys. We'll change the matches around. And the minute, every time he saw me, he'd be like, oh, there's my guy. And like everybody else would, I was cool with him to the point where like, I'd go out to eat with him after, we'd hang out. And, like I would just like in front of people though, I would just like work it. Like he would pick me and they'd be like, you picking me again? I'd be like, I'm going to rip those cheap sideburns right off your head. Like, but it would sound real. Like I would sit in the locker, like, get away from me. I'd be like, don't talk to me. Like, because I knew that he don't call anything anyway. So we would just go in there and do it. And it was always the easiest, but it's a Honky Tonk Man. So it was awesome. Like who doesn't want to wrestle the Honky Tonk Man? You don't got to do anything. So always a pleasure. One of my favorites to be on shows, be in the locker room with, always the best stories, always the best rants. Get the Honky Tonk Man a beer and let him start talking. That's all I got to tell you. You can't go wrong. He'll say a lot of stuff.
Absolutely. When I saw that you've been quite a few times to wrestle in Puerto Rico, wanted to ask you that, and if you had any of the experiences. I've had the pleasure of interviewing a lot of folks that have worked in Puerto Rico, and they always talk about how even in modern times, how what's the word, enthusiastic the fans were. Did you have any stories along those lines?
Dude, I'll tell you right now, man. I've been wrestling on that island for almost 3 years. I've been in pretty much the only major fed I haven't been in is IWA, but there's a few indies and a couple of the bigger ones. Obviously, WWC being the biggest, which I'm still in right now. I was the champ up until last month. Yeah, I mean, those fans are unbelievable. Like they're unbelievable. Like 100 fans there sounds like 500 fans anywhere else. And when you get 1,000 fans there, it's like a full arena. And when you get 2,000 fans, and so on and so on. So it's they are some of the best. I think honestly, if I'm really speaking from my heart, I think that's the best place to wrestle. And I mean, for me, you know, I love tropical climates. I love them. Oh, all right, you're back. You know, the girls on the island are phenomenal looking. The activities that you can do there, casinos, this, that. I mean, the people are so laid back. The food is 10 out of 10. I love Puerto Rico, man. So for me, yeah, it's electric. And I'll tell you, WWC, I think if a lot of the workers knew, because we kind of got lost in the last generation, I think a lot of the workers knew how just their not too high quality TV program is how popular it really is on mainstream TV there. I cannot go anywhere on that island without being recognized at this point. Anywhere I go. There's times I go to restaurants and they tell me there's no table space or reservations and someone else sees me and they're like, right this way. And like, you know what I mean? It's like, really, dude? Like, I'm like, oh, all right. And I'll be walking down the street. It was funny. I was telling somebody, I was walking in the street and I was like, you know, half the time people are shouting at their cars at me, you know, like, and it's crazy. And not even 2 seconds after I said it, car was like, Muse. I was like, Bryan, I know. I was like, told you. Because the thing is, I'm easily recognizable there. Nobody, I'll tell you right now, there's no other blonde, long haired white dude wrestling on the island there, man. It's just not, and if he did, it's one time. And I've been there day in and day out. And, you know, other than bringing these other NWA guys, you know, there's not that many, there's not many regular white dudes with long hair. So I really stand out. Like you and it's not a huge island, man. It's I mean it's a little bit a couple hours long if you drive it. So and there's a lot of rural areas. So when you're in those main cities, people watch that program, people recognize you, and I mean it was to the point. Honestly, I'm not trying to exaggerate. It's the truth. I remember when I did the Anniversario 49, they were running the commercials for it a couple weeks before, and they were running my promos. And I remember I was on the same plane with Ric Flair, and when I got off the plane, just as many people were talking to me as they were Ric Flair. And you know, if you put me in any other state in this country, I don't think that's happening. So, I mean, they're true fans, man, and I think it's phenomenal. And you know, if I can peel back a layer here, and I don't want to talk your ear off, but that's why. I mean, I'm not trying to be getting clout. Maybe I am. I don't know. I'm the guy that has put together this NWA relationship with Puerto Rico in the now. And it means a lot to me. And I hope it's very fruitful for both sides. And I hope it continues and grows. And it was a dream of mine that I realized before I was even in NWA. And I didn't know NWA would be the catalyst of it. I just knew I was looking for something. And, you know, when I was able to link those two up, it was a process that probably started 2 years ago. And now it's finally come through. And this Saturday, it sounds like a commercial now. This Saturday is the start of it officially. And I'm super excited about it. Like, super excited about it. And like I said, not for me. I've already been there. Like, I'm there, still there. Like, you know, I work all their shows. I'm excited about it because I know the fans there are going to get to see some different people that maybe some of the ones they actually wanted to see. And I think the other way around, I think the states here need to discover, like, I can't wait. We need to do a huge show for the world to see live from, you know, I don't know which venue we'll do it in, but whatever. There's a lot of great little venues there. And like, I really think like if the world sees an event live from there, like how the anniversarios are, I think they'll understand and be like, man, there's guys there that are really talented, man. And like, I get it. Like, if I'm being honest, I get it. The, the style fluctuates there. Like sometimes it's just way too unnecessarily hardcore, or sometimes it's just not great psychology and the match is very old school. Like, you know, you just brawl outside the ring the whole time, go back in and it's over. But there are some guys on that island. There's a handful of guys that are super special. And giving a chance to get them out to the mainstream, I think, is huge. And the cool thing is, getting a resurgence of Ray Gonzalez, who is a legend there, and he's actually wrestling really good right now. So if the American fans get a chance to see him and understand that it's like, it's like a gold dust. It's like a guy who's very up there in age, performing at a high level, and is very loved by the fans. So you get a little taste, at least you get to see it with your own eyes on the way out. So I think that's really cool. And I'm looking forward to just the fact that I could be a part of bringing that whole experience to the rest of the world, because it's really important to me. So
Cool.
That's what I got.
And you've just talked about your involvement in the NWA, Billy Corgan's NWA, and it seems to me that they have a lot of potential. I understand they're reaching out to independents to form associations and that sort of thing, and look at perhaps reinvigorating a territory system, if you will, of which Puerto Rico could, be a huge part. What is your understanding of the big goals, the big picture goals for the NWA? And personally, what would you like to do in that company that you haven't already done?
Well, I mean, that's a twofold question, obviously. So I think it's clear to state, and I think, some people know at this point and some people don't. I'm actually the national promoter for the NWA. And so I've been having a very large say. I can't take credit for everything, and I give a lot of credit to Billy, but we are turning a corner. To anybody that's been watching for the last, I don't know, 8 months, we've been filling large buildings with lots of people, like record setting since the dawn of the Lightning One era. Our studio crowds are way up. Which is bizarre to me. I feel like we don't show them all on camera, which it's not my call, but I'm saying there's a lot of people in that studio, and sometimes I noticed on one of the tapes the other day I was watching, and I was like, why? The larger part of the crowd was on an angle that they were showing less, and I was like, I just don't understand. But hey, not my call. I'm turning it into a negative here, so I don't wanna. But point is, we are turning a corner on the up, and I'm very proud of the role I've played in that. And if somebody asks me what the magic bullet is and all that, besides my undying love and devotion to William Patrick Corgan, the magic bullet is what you said, the potential of what the NWA has. Because one thing you shouldn't lose focus of is this is a high production company. It's high level. Now, there's things that can always be improved, but generally the improvements are more simplistic than grandiose, meaning it's not like, well, we don't have the technology. Like, we have all the technology. So it's like, we need some more bells and whistles. Okay, we have to decide on that. So that's a process. It's like the government. You're dealing with a bunch of people. Everybody's got their vote. You got to decide what's best. It's not just one guy's vision, and it gets kind of difficult. So it takes time. But what we do have is a very talented roster. And people can argue that it's taste, but we have top guys that can go with anyone in the world, and I like to include myself in that category in case people don't know. But I just think that's what makes it special, is we have this level, this gear that we have yet to get to, because we're setting the table. I mean, look, this year we rolled out the the streaming deal with CW. The reality show's coming out next week, which most people didn't even know was being made. Past that, there's other things in the works, and they're pretty big, and I just think it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So we're setting the table for larger things, and I'm very proud of, like I said, the role I played especially in the live stuff, and the behind the scenes, because we have a whole new direction. I mean, it can be seen. I'm not giving away secrets when I tell you, look at our schedule. We have shows booked out for the year. It's the first time in the history of the Lightning One era that we did that. And that's important, because it shows fans we're here to stay and we're moving forward. And it's something that I think psychologically people overlooked, and it matters. And so, the little things matter. And so I feel like I've been instrumental in shoring up some of those details. And I'm not afraid to pat myself on the back, and I'm not scared if you virally put this clip out. I'm not going to get in trouble because I know what I've done, and I'm proud of it. And like I said, when this company gets closer to where it's going, we have the potential to make a lot of noise. Now, that said, in all fairness, just because I'm not a professional cheerleader, the potential for disaster is around every corner. So you can never say it's a sure thing until it happens. You know, you don't score until you score. And as far as what you said, my other goals, I mean, my goals in the NWA are to get this thing to what I believe is the promised land. And I've been very selfless, even though I'm patting myself on the back. Believe me, I've sacrificed a lot more than I think others would or would give me credit for to make that happen. And in the face of a lot of adversity. And yeah, man, you know, I'd like to put some title wins under me. And if I'm being honest about myself as a wrestler, it's been some adjusting in some situations because when you're filming for TV and you're wrestling on TV, it's not the same as the indies. And even though sometimes things directly translate, you know, you have to listen to those people around you, and maybe sometimes you don't listen right or you listen too much or whatever it is, and things don't quite come off the way they might normally for me. I'm speaking about me now, you know, and so like I've faced a little of like, I could have did that better. I'm not really coming off the way I want to. And like I'm like, I know better than that. Like, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, so there's an adjustment there. And I think I'm finally starting to get close to understanding it and being able to see it outside of myself, like looking back, watching it to where I can make these corrections. And I think that would propel me to the next level as a wrestler in that company. I'm saying, or I could just be completely insane and delusional and wrong, and I'm just garbage. I don't know, but I was like, these are my opinions. These are how I feel about myself. So I'm gonna go with that. And yeah, so those are my goals, man. I would like to add some historic title wins, just for the sake of history. I mean, look, I'm already a winner in my mind. I wrestle for a legendary company, and I've made a difference in it, so that's cool. But yeah, I mean, record books wise, now let me get some of that Arn Anderson shine. Let me get some of that Ric Flair shine. Let me get some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Why not me? Why not me? Right?
You team with an individual that I've had the pleasure of interviewing as well, Natalia Markova in the NWA, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that experience, but within the context of your thoughts on mixed gender tags and intergender wrestling. How do you see that? You're talking about how the NWA is a big production, et cetera, et cetera. Do you see a place for that in a serious organization? I'm speaking mostly now of the intergender stuff, which is controversial. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think there is a very big place for it. And I'll even go the other way. Watch this again, just to show you the kind of person I am. Maybe I'm dumb. I personally do not prefer it. However, I think it's something that the fans really love. And I think when done right, I like the classic intergender rules of the people cannot touch, building into that they can. So I think there's a way to start it out. And I still think I guess what I'm saying is I still think there's a medium in which we haven't reached yet in the world of intergender wrestling to where it's really been perfected, which is interesting because pretty much all of wrestling has been perfected. And I feel like that's one where there's a little bit of gray area still. And that said about all that, I love teaming with Natalia Markova. I will argue with anyone on this planet. And again, it's hard to talk numbers. We'll just call it top 5. You know, arguably, she's my number 1, but top 5 in the world, legitimately. I don't care what Fed you're talking about. Top 5 in the world. You find me a female wrestler that can do everything that Natalia Markova does, and you found one of the other, 4 besides her, because there's not many. There is not many that wrestle like that, bump like that, strike like that, talk like that, look like that, move like that. It's just he's 1 in a billion, dude. And I'm very lucky to get my wagon anywhere near there. So believe me, I don't take it for granted. And I think she is beyond an instrumental part of the NWA. And I think, when it comes to naysayers or people that trash the company and say, this guy's old, this guy sucks, blah, 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 blah about other people. I think Natalia Barkova is someone that has never let the fans down performance wise and legitimizes. She's good enough that she legitimizes the entire female roster, in my opinion. And not that there aren't other great ones there. I'm just saying she has that ability. There could not be great ones there, and she would legitimize it. And she overall legit. You can hang your hat. She is she's a franchise QB, man. You can hang your hat on it, and let's go. She'll take you to the promised land. So and again, obviously, I'm very close with her, but I'm not saying that out of like, oh, we're buds. Like, no, dude, I'm saying look at the resume, look at the body of work. So, you know, that's all I could do is be honest about the way I see things because everybody. Some people watch this or watch interviews and they don't think people are truthful or whatever. I'm saying like I'm really trying to operate from not from a place of like friends and da 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 da. I'm operating from a place of facts. Like when I say someone's good or I say someone's this, and that's top level, man. Best five in the world. That's it. I'm over talking it, but that's what it is.
No, absolutely. Mr. Cheap Heat himself, Morris Shorthall, discovered a wild clip of you at a Walmart where you apparently look like you're spearing some no good thief. Could you tell us that?
I believe I was wearing this shirt actually. Now that you say it, yeah, no, that was actually somebody stole her purse. We were coming back. It was my NWA debut, and we were at a match against Sam Shaw, Dexter Loomis, and it was my debut. And we were coming back on the plane. Natalia was actually injured, so she was a little out of it. She left her bag. We were in the last seats of the plane. She left her bag, so there's only one guy across from us. Of course, that's the guy that took the bag. And she happened to have her AirPods in there, and I remembered it. And I said, "Hey, are they connected to your phone?" Sure enough, they were. And I basically tracked the guy 40 minutes away at a Walmart, and I caught him. And the rest of the story, you can go see it on NewYorkPost.com or wherever else. Just type in NWA wrestler tackles thief. So I mean, I more than tackle him. I beat him up. Let's face it, but not until he hit me. But it turns out the law said I could beat him up immediately. I did not know that, but I waited for him to hit me, and he hit me, so I beat him up. Regardless, we got everything back, and it was good, and it was a fun story. And I suggest you read about it, like I said. But yeah, I mean, the funny part is, believe me, she was no victim in that, and I'm pretty sure if I didn't tackle the guy and beat him up, she would have. So I don't think she wasn't shy about it. And you can see the security clips right there too, and you can see she's not shy about it. She's ready to take charge of the thing. I'm the one telling her to go get somebody, but it's pretty funny.
That's tremendous. Could you talk about how you became involved in Next Gen, specifically how you were selected, the highs and lows of the experience, and your overall thoughts? Because is it not, or am I mistaken, kind of like an updated version of Tough Enough?
No, it's really not. So it's more paying homage to that new program they have with these college athletes. So it's almost like the last licks of it. So like they know those, what are those called? Future, whatever. Yeah, I don't know, those contracts they're signing with guys. So these are people that they may have considered for it that they didn't sign, that kind of their athletic career ended in college and they're just back to being regular Joes. They didn't get drafted anywhere. There's no future for them. That's where they assembled these people. Now, it has nothing to do with me in that regard. So basically, one of the guys, and it was, I could tell you now because the show's out and whatever. So it was the Aaron Jenkins kid who I believe he had some kind of medical condition and he really couldn't continue. And then they kind of gave him a hard time on the show, kind of made him look worse than he was, I feel like. But actually, my involvement in it was Aaron was a fan of mine, I guess. I mean, it was him, I guess. But so they brought the whole crew and basically did like a Q&A / seminar with him, like just like, laying out my resume, and I've been to the Performance Center and I've done a tryout and I worked for Evolve, which is the only company that ever got bought by WWE. And I was in the only WWE non pay-per-view, which is Evolve. And I was the guy standing in the ring when the lights went out and Paul Heyman shows up at the ECW arena after 18 years. So it's like, I've been around, done a couple of things even with WWE somehow. And so they did this thing and they filmed a bunch of footage. And it's funny because I make it right in the trailer and I had no idea. The commercial comes out, everyone's tagging me, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm in this WWE commercial. So I get a phone call from the company and they're like, yeah, we're using you in the show, blah, blah, blah. So they had all this footage. But I'd be a poser at this point if I was telling you that they really used me in the show, because it turns out they really didn't. They just used me in the trailer. So I was like, I didn't, we filmed a lot. And I mean, Triple H was giving directions in what we were filming. So, and probably Cena too. So I'm saying, like, they were well aware. And, I was told I did a very good job when we did it. The director was super happy with me. And he was like, we got some great stuff today. They said, I mean, they could be BSing because that's what people do. But when they had filmed it, they basically told me this is the best thing we've filmed the entire time. And they were like, this is amazing. So I got to think it was the directors when they put the trailer together who slid me in the show. So I appreciate it. Like, I thought that was cool to me. I got paid either way. And it was cool to end up in that trailer. Would have been better to be a bigger part of that show. And it was funny because I had planned, I was going to do something with Hulk Hogan involving it. And we had discussed it and we planned it. And then the whole thing didn't happen. And I was like, hey, false alarm. But so, I mean, I don't know if they really cared, but I mean, that's Hulk Hogan. I was about to give them some additional content, but
can you talk about that?
Well, we were talking about doing like a watch along, and we were gonna tell a couple stories, and I was gonna make sure it was I had been in touch with somebody from that media company, so it would have been well produced like that, and that's what we were going for, and it was really cool of Hulk to be even talking about it. So but regardless, it's still cool to be in the trailer and get the nod like that. Nobody else is. You know what I mean? On every wrestler in the world, nobody else is. I'm in the same commercial with every legend, Shawn Michaels, John Cena, Albert, Triple H, I mean, Flair, they're all in those commercials. And I think Charlotte Flair, everybody's in those commercials, that commercial, and I'm in the commercial. Here's me. Hi. So even if it's for a second, I've been there. I'm actually, in action, locking up with the guy in the commercial. So pretty cool. And it's at my school. They filmed it. So like everything else is PC and whatever, tryout. And then little clip of my school right there, me like in the ring. You can almost not tell that it's a different location, but just fun nonetheless. So I almost wonder sometimes, like, if I'm being real about it, did they even notice that they put it in there? You know what I mean? So the heck knows. So pretty fun. But I mean, it was a cool concept. I mean, I'm a big believer when you pull guys like that aren't lifelong, wrestling fans, or somebody that really worked their way up at all. I think it's really hard to make stars out of them. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but it's really hard. And I understand the logic and the mindset, because running a wrestling school, I run into so many delusional, no effort, mediocre people where you're just like, man, you have to put effort and stop making excuses, stop with the BS, stop with the this and that. So and you can't tell them things. Their heads get blown up fast. They work one wrestling show, they think they're ready to be WWE champion. So I understand the mindset of picking coachable, real athletes that understand discipline and how to eat and when to wake up and work out and blah, blah, blah. So I get it, but I don't think in the end, ultimately, you can churn out a large amount of talents like that. It just doesn't work. And we've seen it. So, I mean, call me crazy, but I mean, we've seen it. How many of those guys going through the performance center from big colleges and big and not allowed them pan out? So, I mean, but I guess if you quantify the odds, I guess it's the same for everybody still. So who knows?
Well, Bryan, you've been very, very generous with your time. I want to use this opportunity for you to let the fans know where they can find you on social media, and as well as keep up with the projects that you have undertaken.
Yeah, man, it's pretty simple. If you just search any of the social medias at the Bryan, Bryan, IDOL, Idol, usually you can find out what's happening in my world. I don't really update my website that much anymore. It's kind of a pain in the butt. So I stick to the social medias, and then every once in a while I'll just dump a bunch of stuff on the website, and it looks like I did something, but don't really keep up on it. So just the Bryan Idol, and you can generally I'm pretty good at promoting and putting my stuff out there. So if I got something going on, you probably will see it. And I appreciate anyone who would support and does support, and I do have a lot of great fans, and I'm very proud of having loyal fans. You know, I mean that's what this is all about. If you're not making a connection with people and they don't want to interact with you, what are you doing this for? You know what I mean? So I'm very grateful. I get it. I understand the game, and I really appreciate everyone that supports me. And I'm very easy to reach out to, and I'm proud of that too. I don't care. I'm not above answering a question from a fan or whatever. And I've started with people like that turned into people that have wrestled on major TV and become stars.